Welcome to the Walking David podcast. I'm your host, David Grayson, otherwise known as the Walking David, and here we hit harder than Hardwick, we clear the air more than Morgan, and we find ourselves entertained. Let's get started. Okay, so for the very first episode of this podcast, I reached out to my fan base and I asked them, what in the hell do you want me to talk about? Because I got nothing. Okay, so I get this question a lot. A follower asked me who is my favorite character and why, and to talk about their relationships with some of the other main characters and their character arc. Anybody who follows me on TikTok or YouTube, they know that my favorite character is Rick Grimes. I mean, just hands down. He's the titular character. I think he's the most well-written character of all of them. I think Andrew Lincoln is a brilliant actor, and I think it's a travesty that he hasn't been nominated for an Emmy at any point in the Walking Dead's run. But here's the thing. I think I'm going to save talking about Rick for another time. I need to pick a character that I really, really enjoy and that wouldn't just be my first choice. Because that way we really have an honest discussion. Because otherwise I'm just going to be super biased towards Rick and it's not going to be that great of a talk. I honestly think that although he's not my favorite character, one of the best written characters on the show was Shane. Because Shane sort of exemplifies what so many good writers talk about when it comes to good characters and good character development. Everybody wants to imagine themselves as Rick, the white knight, the good husband, the guy who's going to do anything to protect his family. We all love those characters. But Shane is actually pretty damn close to kind of a Walter White character in Breaking Bad. And that's just because, like Walter White, he starts out and he's a very good-hearted man who's just trying to do right by his family. But when he's put into an extraordinary situation, it starts to change his mind. And every time he compromises himself, he is more open to compromising himself. You know what I mean? It's sort of like if you were willing to hurt somebody for your family, how much are you willing to hurt somebody for your family? Are you willing to just punch somebody? Are you willing to stab someone, to kill someone, to shoot them? Because Shane kind of slowly gets to that point. He slowly erodes his humanity, which, you know, at the time you might hate him for it, but later, as the show goes on, you start to realize that Rick starts to become more like Shane was. And we still like Rick. So retroactively, you should kind of still like Shane and kind of respect it. It's just that he adapted too quickly. He was too quick to allow himself to go animalistic, to go completely survival mode. Rick was trying to maintain a semblance of order and the old world, but Shane understood that this world was just gone, and it was never going back, and the sooner you realize that, the sooner you survive. Shane wanted to go to Fort Benning, where there were weapons, there were rations. He thought that there would be people there who would be willing to take out some of these walkers, because this is such an early stage of the show. Most people didn't have experience killing walkers. Most people could only take on one at a time. You know, and that was usually going to be the tough person of the society. A lot of the women still weren't killing any of these walkers. It was just the men protecting everybody. And Shane wanted to go there. Rick wanted to go to the CDC, where he thought, well, doctors will surely have an answer for this. And it's like, that's what we all wish would be the case. But Shane's aware that if the government's already fallen, if the whole country's already fallen, what makes you think that doctors and the CDC would still somehow stay intact? Now, granted, the CDC was intact, but everybody was dead. It kind of proved Shane's point. And Shane realized that, and then when they got trapped in there, part of the reason I think that Shane was so upset wasn't even the fact that he thought he was getting trapped in there and that they were going to die. It's the fact that he kept suggesting a better solution, but Rick just hadn't gotten to that mental place yet. Hopefully that makes sense. All of this is just coming off the dome. I have not taken any notes. I really don't want to do that. It doesn't make it fun for me. But I'm enjoying talking about it. It's cool to address this stuff again. Another reason to like Shane in terms of storytelling, not in terms of like the character and his decisions, but understanding the character, I think Shane is probably one of the most fleshed out characters. You knew his backstory, you knew his best friend, you knew his relationship with his family, you saw how he was when Rick was perceived to be dead, and he really was being a good guy. I mean, despite the fact that he was sleeping with his best friend's wife, that's repugnant. It did seem that if Rick had stayed away, that he would have done right by Lori and Carl. I don't think that he would have abandoned them. I think he would have stayed and protected them and probably stayed with Lori. But that's the thing, is that people don't want to admit that they are capable of those things. But most people are. Most people are horribly, horribly flawed. And Shane shows that. There's also a quote that always comes to mind is one that George R.R. Martin said about his characters in Game of Thrones, where he says he doesn't believe that there's ever a perfectly good hero and a perfectly evil villain. Everybody is a blend. He said the thing that makes good writing and good drama and good dramatic moments is the human heart in conflict with itself. Shane is that personified. He is constantly having a battle with himself. We see that in his demeanor. We see that in his actions. We see that in his look. It's literally like when he's buzzing his head, he's quite literally shedding who he was and embracing this new, darker version of himself. And yeah, it's really early on, but look at how somebody else handled it. Look how Andrea handled it. Her thing was to just kill herself. A person who would never have done that, days before, now is just like checking out, basically, on life. And only due to Dale and other people's intervention did she even live. Shane didn't do that. Shane was tough. But his solution was to just get even tougher and get tougher faster and just become more heartless quicker. And he still had rationale. He was kind of right. When it came to looking for Sophia, we want to believe once again that we would be like Rick and we would want to save her. But Shane was aware that in the real world, when a child goes missing, you usually only have 2 to 3 days before they have to presume that the child is dead. And Rick was doing this for weeks. So, Shane was right. We don't want to believe that he's right, but he's right. But the problem is that because Shane is also a flawed person, even though he loves Rick, where he is flawed is that Rick has a perspective of someone who has a wife and a family. Shane is coming at it as somebody who's the side guy, who is now taking on somebody else's family, and it does not have the same impact. And so he doesn't know how to deal with his feelings of infatuation, or anything like that, which is why Rick calls him out. He goes, you think you love her, but you don't. You think you do, but you don't. And that's in the episode 18 Miles Out, if I remember right. And that's where we get a little glimpse inside Rick's mind, where you see that Rick actually does have a little bit of darkness in him, but he is choosing to restrain it for the good of the group. Shane does not do that. Shane doesn't think in terms of selflessness. He thinks in terms of selfishness about himself. Once Rick was back, a good-hearted man, once he apologized, he would just let him enjoy being with his family. But he couldn't let it go. And people who lack emotional maturity have a hard time letting their opinions go. They want to be right. Every villain believes they are the hero of their own story. So I would have to say, in terms of the writing, as the seasons of the show went on, Shane was probably one of my favorite characters in terms of the writing and the performance. I think that John Bernthal did an amazing job, and I think that if we had gotten that from anybody else later on in the show would have been so much better, because he just brought something to it. He brought some gravitas to it. And the writing then, it was just better. That's my opinion. Okay, let's get another topic. And here's another thing, is that although Shane was killed off relatively early in the show, he did have a very complete arc. He started in one position and he ended up in another. He started out as a good cop who maybe had kind of, more of an edge to him, kind of a cocky attitude and thinking that he understood the world better than Rick did. But then he ended up completely representing how broken the world was. A guy who was law and order, quite literally, alongside Rick, ended in complete chaos. And it was his like origin story of being kind of like a Joker-esque character. All he did towards the end was wreak havoc and tried to poison the entire group. And that's the whole point. If you look at Shane and his character arc like an apple, we come into the show, the apple has already bloomed, okay? The apple is just hanging on the tree and it's fresh. But as it goes, once we prick the surface area of the apple, we prick the skin, and the air is able to get inside, the apple starts to rot. And it starts to rot in that spot, and it goes all the way to the core. And then it branches out to other areas of the apple, making it soft, making it weak, and eventually causing it to die. That is what happened with Shane. The apocalypse was a little prick in the skin of the apple. As we delved deeper into that apple and it started to rot, he compromised himself, slept with Lori, usurped Rick's spot as the dad and kind of became a surrogate father for Carl. And although it seems good on the surface for the most part, because all we see is just a little prick, a little hole, it's starting to rot already. Then by the time Rick shows up and he plucks the apple off the tree, he sees that, this is a little bit soft. This apple isn't quite healthy anymore. So what do we do as an audience? We dissect it. We cut the apple in half. And Rick sees the rot. And he tries to tell people, listen, you guys, this apple is rotten. Don't take a bite of it. Some people listen, some people don't. Some people see what he sees. Some people choose to believe it. It's okay. It's a little bit of rot. Who cares? I'll eat around it. But there really is no eating around it. It's rotten. You have to get rid of it, or you'll make yourself sick. Rick even says this in a way when they are around the dying fire. Okay? He says, you saw how he threatened me. You saw how he pushed me. How he kind of tore us apart. That is him basically saying, like, guys, you saw it for yourselves. You saw the rot. You saw that he was a bad apple. All I did was throw it away. Good job on that apple analogy. That analogy was a good apple. That was a very good apple. You should talk about how the walkers are evolving and your point of view about it. Dumb. Wrong. Have you ever heard the expression, too little, too late? I wanted to help her, but it was too little, too late. I couldn't. That's what that is. Hey, you guys, I know that the show is suffering. I know that we have a bunch of these spin-offs and we kind of distracted people from the main show, but, what if we just had the walkers evolve 3 episodes before the show's over? It's like it cuts to them in like a business meeting. Yeah, Kevin, what do you got? I mean, don't you think it's going to be weird that, they've been in this whole time and the walkers never did nothing, and now all of a sudden they're starting to evolve, and then we're going to end the show before we even get a chance to explain what the hell's happening, and everyone's going to go, did I just see that, or is that not weird? Kevin, I'm not really sure what you're getting at. Well, I think it's pretty obvious. I think it doesn't make no sense. I mean, I think that why would we do that? I mean, that just seemed like, can't we just end the show and not do that? I mean, can't the walkers still be dangerous without having them grab Jerry or other pointless characters? It's an interesting point you bring up, Kevin. Yeah. Greg. Well, I have a great idea. What if, and hear me out, we introduce it in the main show, and we never explain it, right? But then we make an entire new show, and we have it be in that, and we explain it then. Greg, I always liked you. You're promoted. It's really, really dumb. It's super, super dumb. It should not be the case. I don't get why you would have them evolve at this point. And for those of you who really think that this was intentional, that they skipped from season 1 and season 2 to season 11 to introduce evolved walkers or variant walkers. Yeah, COVID didn't affect that idea at all. Not at all. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. It's called bad writing. The show had a different showrunner when they first thought of that. And it probably wasn't super intentional, but they were like, okay, well, it's just a couple of extras. They picked up a rock, and that one in the background's drinking from a water bottle. And it happens. Shows have mistakes. Sue me. You know what, you guys? If people are too focused on that, then we did something wrong. There's a lot of shows that have errors like that. Like, Game of Thrones had a fucking coffee cup in the last season. I mean, you're that shocked that some fucking walker picked up a rock? It's like, it could have been an accident. You're telling me it picking up a rock and climbing over a fence was just like, yeah, that was all pre-planned? Really? Then how come in the first episode we don't see one grab Rick, and pull his gun out of his pocket or something like that? Why not? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It's just a fuck up. It's a flub. It's a fuck up. That's all that was. But then the showrunners heard that The Last of Us was probably in production, and they saw that Resident Evil was coming out with these games and movies and stuff like that, and they go, you know what? What do they have that we don't have? Speed. Our walkers are slow. That's why everybody's able to get away, is because the walkers are slow. What if we just had them start running? Have you not even thought about the physics of it? It makes sense that a walker could walk because it's very low pressure on the joints and everything like that. Obviously, they don't feel anything, but it's like your body still would fall apart. You're decaying. To run, every walker would have their legs break the moment they started running because they have the texture of a fucking pumpkin. People are literally putting their thumb through their skulls. I mean, Aaron's doing it, Maggie's doing it. They're ripping them apart with their bare hands. You can't do that with a human skull unless if it has the texture of a pumpkin. The show even said that in a behind the scenes video. They just go, these decaying walkers, they have kind of the texture of a pumpkin. So that's why they're able to stab him in the head now, and they couldn't in the first couple of seasons. It's because they have pumpkin heads now. They're all just a bunch of fucking jack-o'-lanterns running around. Sorry, walking around. But now we're going to have them evolve. And how are we going to do that? Are we going to introduce that back when Eugene even thinks that the walkers are evolving because of the Whisperers? No, but we could have. You could have. Did you introduce it after the time jump? To where maybe enough time has passed to where somehow or other there is a generational difference between walkers. Like after 10 years, they start doing something kind of funky, which, by the way, is a Last of Us thing. The Last of Us does that. They go, yeah, bloaters become this way after 10 or 15 years of just being left to their own devices. And I just go, but you're not The Last of Us. Those aren't the physics of your show. I hit my light. Stop wobbling. God, it's distracting. But listen, you should never introduce anything towards the end of a show. Everything should be known factors, and you are wrapping up stories. To introduce something new is to neglect something old in terms of these shows, especially when you have a dead end coming up. You know, when you're down the highway and there's just miles and miles ahead of you, you just drive straight down the highway, right? But do you just, when you come up on a cul-de-sac, on a circle drive, do you just keep driving into the fucking houses and trees? No, you stop. You knock it the fuck off. You slow down and come to a gradual stop before you crash into the homes. So this is a mistake. It's a big, big mistake. You know, I don't know when that shit cut off. I don't care. I'm continuing my flow. What I was saying about the walkers evolving is that bleeds into my next topic of discussion, which I've already briefly discussed in the Walking Dead series finale video. I might link it somewhere, and you can go and hear how pissed off I am about that. To detract from the main series. Oh, God. Air conditioning. We're still going, and I'm going to clap it now. To detract from the main series in order to make some diluted down spinoffs is just so profoundly dumb in the marketing department that I'm blown away. I mean, my degree is in marketing. I would never do this. And I know you're thinking, well, it doesn't really matter if you wouldn't do it or not, but I'm just telling you that it's a bad move. Let's use the example of a wedding. Okay? You're getting married. It's your big day. Well, yeah, forever. But here's the thing. During the wedding, right before the I do's, right before it's official, all of your groomsmen decide they're going to propose to their girlfriends right before you say I do on your special day. Now it takes away from your special day and puts the focus on these three dumb fucks. And you go, hey, don't you guys have a little bit of decorum? Can't you at least wait until I'm done getting married over here? And they go, no. Your marriage doesn't matter, and we can't wait. We have to let people know that we are all going to be getting married soon. And so, guys, don't worry. If this wedding isn't good enough, there's 3 more coming up. I know we're ruining this one right now. Like, we're the reason that this one isn't as good. But that don't worry about it, because we have 3 that are coming out. It's just like, you're all invited. It's super, super stupid and rude. It's rude. How about that? Has anybody made that argument? It's rude. It's rude to the actors who are on that main show that will not be a part of those spinoffs. And it's also rude to people who want to watch your proper series, the original series, and now they already know who lives and who dies. That's so dumb. I haven't watched Dead City yet, and Daryl Dixon in France and the Rick and Michonne show haven't come out, but I'm telling you, the only one that was okay to announce was the Rick and Michonne show, because those characters were still shown to be alive, and those characters were actively looking for each other. But you needed to not know if Daryl was going to make it or not to have any tension for his character during the finale of your show. I mean, I don't know why the fuck I'm censoring myself. During the finale of your motherfucking show, you are supposed to have tension about these characters, because just like the first few seasons of Game of Thrones and just like the first 5, 6, 7 seasons of The Walking Dead, the main characters dying has to be a possibility. When you take that away, you nerf the entire show, you make watching it pointless, it makes the walkers not a threat. It's not that the walkers aren't a threat. It's that main characters don't die anymore. Because you're going to get what? Fan mail? People are going to rage on the internet? Who cares? Because now they're raging on the internet because you fucked up the show. Hey, you guys, did you know that the walkers are going to be involved in Dead City? Oh, I'm a person who's never seen the actual show. This Dead City looks interesting. I think I'm just going to watch it. There's like 11 seasons of the other show. That's a lot. I can't focus for that long because I have ADHD. So I'm just going to watch this show. It's less stressful for me. How come this Negan person and this Maggie person are so angry at each other? He seems all right. She's being a bit of a bitch if you ask me. It's because they don't know anything about the main fucking show. Here's a big thing, also, that nobody talks about. But the fan base will probably get what I'm saying, I think, to a degree. A huge part of any fandom, of any show, is that the show typically has rewatch value. Because most shows, when they're done really, really well, like all the way up until the end, they have amazing rewatch value. You can rewatch The Sopranos and Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and, you can watch these shows, and they're just fantastic from start to finish. I mean, they just maintain their level of excellence the entire way through. And that is why they are these beacon, staple, pillar shows of entertainment. That's why they are the gold standard. The reason they are the gold standard is because they maintained excellence. But The Walking Dead steadily, from season 7 all the way down, steadily declined. Because they didn't have faith in their own stuff. They were scared shitless of scaring their fan base away. In an attempt to please everyone, you pleased no one. Because you want Daryl and Carol to get together, but people also want Daryl and Connie to get together, but Daryl and Leah might be together. Now, their choice was to pick one and enrage the rest of the audience, which is what every show has to do. Every show has couples that people don't like. Or they go, I don't get it, I don't see it. People said that about Rick and Michonne. And now they have a whole show. By doing that, they decided, we're just going to do none of it. Our choice is to make no choice. That's like if the show was written by TikTokers. I don't want to make the wrong choice, so I just did nothing instead. I didn't want to go to school and take a test because I might get the wrong answers on some of the questions, and so I just think I won't go to school. I think I'll just drop out because I'm just too scared to make a decision and get a wrong answer every now and then. Even if I end up only getting 2 wrong answers and I still get a 98 on the test, and it's still an A+, I might get 2 wrong answers, and I just can't cope with that. That's stupid. That's stupid. Come on, AMC. I want to act in one of your shows, but here's the thing, is I can't help but be honest with you. I cannot be a sycophant. No show that you are truly a fan of should be beyond criticism. Should never have made these spin-off shows. You should have waited. Or you know what you could have done? You could have done all the subjects of those spin-off shows in the show. Why couldn't Rick and Michonne unite in the show? Why couldn't Negan and Maggie team up in the show? And why couldn't Daryl go to France in the show? Why did you have to make spin-offs and detract from the impact of the main show? Why in the flying fuck did you do it? You saw how The World Beyond got received. You saw it. It sucks, okay? It sucks. The people on it know it, and the people who watched it know it, and the whole fan base didn't enjoy it, okay? I'm sorry that 36,000 housewives of the Midwest and TikTokers enjoyed The World Beyond because they saw themselves in that young girl and the gay kid who lost a hand. I'm sorry, but that's not enough reason to fuck over an entire fan base. The Walking Dead saved, in many regards, the zombie genre. You really didn't see it as much for a while. It kind of petered out. Between, like, Shaun of the Dead and The Walking Dead, it was kind of just, eh. And it reignited a whole love of zombie genres and films and television shows and all of this stuff just for them to fuck it up themselves. So The World Beyond's terrible. So you saw that and you still made spin-offs? Gosh, you were something else. You were something else. What's the matter with you? What are you doing? Anyways, there's a lot more topics for us to talk about, and I look forward to talking about it, ranting about it, or raving about it with you guys another time. Thank you so much for listening to the Walking David podcast. If you wouldn't mind, it would really help me out. Leave a like, leave a nice comment, share it with your friends, and consider joining the Patreon, patreon.com/thewalkingdavid, so that we can make more of this content just for you guys. Thanks, everybody. I'm Rick Grimes, signing off. Where everybody knows your name. Bum, 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 bum. And they're always glad you came. Fuck, 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 fuck.